Hey, welcome back. It's your boy Nova ZDENT coming back to you with another video. In my effort to diversify my skills and get perspectives on a lot of things. Um, Endymiontv TV, now, kind of an interesting one. Like he pops up on my For You page a little bit. That's but a lot more now since I've been kind of looking for content that I would like to talk about or um, interested in and changing up and diversifying. I wouldn't say he's as bad as Andy Pants Gaming. Like to kind of give you some how I see it, right? Like obviously I'm gonna tag him in it. So if he ever sees it and he wants to ever chop it up or anything like that, like he would be more of a to me an edgier version of Kira TV. Like what his channel is about to me. I have to go in, like I say every video, because I do watch a lot of YouTube content, right? I have to get more in depth with this content. It's a lot. It's not so much like anything with a black woman or a black man or gay stuff in it is the worst thing ever, and it's going to feel automatically, oh man, everything's bad, only white men should be in video games, right? Everything was when men are huge and they have four women on them, that's the only representation of men that can sell video games, right? He's not that kind of guy. It's literally more of uh he's more indie focused, like we're like all of us, right? We're tired of slop being fed down our throats. He's just kind of more of an edgier version. Like Kira TV did MMO, does MMOs. Like everything he does is uh, anti-consumer practices in MMO. He is more over the wide gaming industry, like how you can't just keep. Which is actually funny because it's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about his video is that he's wrong in the way that he's trying to present his um his opinion. Like he's saying, and I don't mean wrong, it's like opinions necessarily can't be wrong. They can and can't. Like they can just be blatantly unfounded and with nothing to back them up. But his hypothesis, his conclusion needs work, right? A lot of his content is games can't you can't keep making the same game and make money. Consumers won't like that when you can look at the most sold games every single year and it's literally the exact same games every year. What his conclusion to me should be, before we go into it, obviously, I'll 2 minutes into yapping, right? Is that he should have more of a perspective that we need to uplift indie developers because passion projects are important too. Games can't become monolithic until they become passion projects, uh, when they become monolithic is when they go too far. So I haven't even watched this video. I watched another video that I'm going to react to later of his, but I saw the name of this one and I just thought this would be more interesting watch.
Game these days. Before, a premium game meant something that was full of expensive cinematics that took years to make, with millions dumped into the most cutting edge graphics, with the most prolific actors of their times voicing some characters so companies can put them in trailers to entice you to buy them, and they were usually, at least back in the day, feature complete. Now, instead, what has happened is the opposite. The games that are being made for less are not only resonating more with players, but they are costing less to buy too. And from what I can gather already, the sentiment that AAA is dying as AA and indie rise has never been more apparent than it is right now. So I want to talk about Diablo 4 and No Rest for the Wicked, and how these executives are trying to defend their lies of overpromising and constantly under-delivering. Because all of this and more is coming together to create what I can only call a catastrophic freefall of where we're going, and we're already seeing creatives fight in broad daylight with clashing ideologies too. So like I said, let's start with Diablo No Rest for the Wicked. You already know what Diablo is. It's an action RPG series that's been going on for years.
So before we get into it, like obviously you heard what his sentiment is, right? Like that a lot of people, and I would have to say a lot of like probably who he knows or he's in circles with say that AAA is dying and that indie darlings and AA, whatever you want that tag to be, is thriving and it's going to replace AAA. It can't happen, right? Like, and don't take what I'm saying as in like it physically cannot happen. Please don't be that guy. What I'm saying is think about all of the catastrophic losses that EA can have. Like here, let me give you an example. Right, again, I'll go back to Tales of Kinzera. I thought the game was great. It is a game about African folklore. I want to see that proliferate the gaming industry. I supported it with my dollar. Not enough people did. They took a chance. It failed. Studio shuttered. Right. Um, Sony bankrolled Concord. It lost hundreds of millions of dollars, and all they did was go darn. time to make another thing, right? It failed at a much more catastrophic level than this tiny indie studio did, but the machine that powers it can keep going, right? As people will continue to keep that machine churning out, and all of the small little failures will be paid for by FIFA, or sorry, EA Sports FC, right, right, EA Sports FC, Madden, NCAA, things of that nature, Call of Duty, even or not Call of Duty, they're not, it's not, Battlefield or whatever. Um, those giant juggernauts can pay for the losses of the things they take a chance on. What we should all hope is that larger studios are willing to take losses to appease the masses. Make a game that's good and not popular. That's not a live service game because it makes goodwill for people, right? Like it gives a young development team a chance to make something, and in 4 or 5 years, I think it can become a staple. You know what I'm saying? I think it becomes Divinity 3 or Baldur's Gate 3. It's a critical success. It is a financial success. It's not a live service perpetual motion machine like World of Warcraft, but it makes you money and people enjoy it and they look better at your larger games.
Years. No Rest for the Wicked is a new action RPG that's been in early access for quite a while for Moon Studios. That's the makers of Ori and the Blind Forest. Wicked looks to combine the build, crafting, and expansive features of your Diablos and your Path of Exiles with the combat style of your Dark Souls-like games if you want to as well. Like I said, there still isn't a full 1.0 release for Wicked yet, but according to user reviews and more, people really like the game, but this is where our story begins. So Thomas Mahler, who runs Moon Studios, recently posted this. As you can see, he called out streamers to try No Rest for the Wicked, and then took a jab at Diablo and Path of Exile, claiming that his game was more hardcore than those other ones. I really didn't read too much into this myself. I mean, games comparing themselves to other games during sales seasons or something is really nothing new. Even products like Coke or Pepsi have taken jabs at each other in the past, so like I said, nothing really new at first. Except then Mike Ybarra, who used to run Activision Blizzard for a few years, he helped with games like Call of Duty or Diablo 4 and Diablo Immortal even, decided to respond to Thomas Mahler and said this: "Putting down other games for your own game's sake doesn't really work. Let your game stand on its own 2 feet. I haven't played in a while, excited to fire it up and check out the progress." So what we have here is a guy from the executive side who's used to pushing expensive games that are full of microtransactions and more, trying to tell another guy who's making a much smaller game that he shouldn't take jabs at games that he has worked on himself. Well, how did Thomas Mahler respond to Mike Ybarra over this? Let's read as it says here. "Mike, real talk, you were put in charge of Diablo and you didn't treat it with the respect it deserved. Diablo used to mean something. Diablo 2 was an utter masterpiece and showed the whole world what Western developers could do. You okay turning Diablo into a microtransaction slot machine where people can buy horse armor for $65. So should we gamers thank you for that, or is a little honest critique deserved here? It's time that executives stop patting themselves on the back after ruining beloved franchises and accept some personal responsibility. And after it was all said and done, you then came out with this gem, so sit back and let others show you how it's done." Thomas then shared this article headline, which shows Mike Ybarra admitting that he had no idea where to take Diablo 4.
So I can see this from both angles, right? Like Mike Ybarra is saying, like, "Hey, we didn't put down anybody." I'm not even sure. Like, I don't know the history exactly of like, did he put people down on his way up or whatever, right? But he's saying you don't have to put down our game in order for your game to stand on some merit or to stand on something. Let the game talk. Let the tape run. Let your game earn its own merit. And then old boy saying, "Man, you took a classic and you turned it into a soulless cash grab. I can tell you that you turned this into a soulless cash grab. It's up to you to prove that you didn't. So let me go ahead and stand on my laurels and my morals and make what you used to make. You can keep making what you make now. I see nothing wrong with either one, right? Let the dollars talk. Not just the dollars, right? Because Diablo is a machine that's already established. It's hard to beat the king when the king can slit its wrist and bleed longer than you, but critical acclaim can mean something, right?
at all when he was working on it. But Thomas is right. Mike was instrumental in ruining Diablo 4's reputation. That cannot be disputed, and Activision Blizzard in general, really, too. Diablo 4, in my opinion, was one of the biggest gaming disappointments in modern gaming. It was a game that was so unbelievably hyped up with false promises, then launched as a fully priced AAA video game that also had a massive microtransaction store for cosmetics day one. And these cosmetics were not cheap either, with barely anything at launch costing anywhere near, let's be real, affordable. Diablo, if you ask me, has been ruined since Diablo 3 even. We all remember the real money auction house that game had too, which was so notorious and poorly implemented that players who actually were able to obtain the best gear in Diablo 3 with the terrible drop rates opted to instead sell these pieces for like insane real money prices, then to just use them themselves in the game that they were playing. It just completely ruined Diablo 3's entire economy and player experience. It turned a once amazing action RPG essentially into a real money auction house that also, I guess, happened to have action RPG gameplay combat at times too. Like a reminder, okay? Diablo 3 did this well over 10 years ago and then some, and since then Blizzard has learned absolutely nothing from their failures, but instead masking their inadequacies by just finding new ways to force players to pay more money for things that should just be obtained.
Now, here's what I say to this critique, right? Saying like instead of making their game better and fixing things that its player base may not like, if their player base keeps paying for things that aren't the fixes, you'll always get this. Now, I get if his argument is, please don't spend your money, even if you like this thing, find a new, smaller company, give them your money, bleed them dry, like bleed this large company dry, and they'll listen to you. But we can't get them to listen to us as long as we continue to imagine paying for something and then like it's my problem. I said in a couple videos ago, right? I own FIFA 17. I own the new NCAA because I don't own the very old one, but I'll never buy another one again, right? I haven't bought a Madden since Madden 25 back in the day. I'd still play that one if I wanted to play Madden, right? Because I refuse to give my dollar anymore to them. I still want to play the thing, and I already spent that dollar back in the day, right? So I'm going to enjoy that thing, but I can't say, hey, every year I'm going to buy this. I hope you fixed it this year. Hey, what happens if you don't? If I don't fix it? Well, I'm just going to be really unhappy when I buy it again, right? Um, to kind of give you more of a perspective, I have buddies who play Diablo 4 right now. They play it religiously. And I've got one buddy who plays Path of Exile. Like he enjoys that game, right? Both of those things exist, right? They're both getting enjoyment. The people who like to spend money on Diablo 4, they're going to play it. They're going to buy it. It doesn't matter, right? And there's four of those guys. There's one guy who's playing the critically acclaimed Path of Exile. He enjoys the hell out of it, right? But they both make enough money to exist. So you kind of got to contend with that in the gaming world, in any space, but particularly in the gaming space.
In the game to begin with. And Thomas isn't wrong in his accusations against what Mike Ybarra and his team did to the loyal Blizzard fanbase. As seen here in 2024, that $65 horse armor bundle is absolutely real. At the time when Blizzard implemented this $65, horse bundle, Diablo 4 itself was around $42 to buy, meaning that the backlash was nuclear because Blizzard genuinely was believing that a digital horse armor bundle was worth more than the entire game it was meant to be used in. This sort of microtransaction hellscape is a big reason why I walked away from Diablo 4 and never looked back after release. Not only was its open world rather pointless, its story kind of whatever, and its many systems just not really worth investing in at the time, but the game continued to ruin its reputation with fans and caused many people to just walk away in disgust after playing and paying Blizzard for what was promised to be the big return for Diablo faithfuls. Diablo 4 has since lost most of its player base and has been unable to bring back the majority of the people who bought the game in the first place. As seen here recently from Google's own trends, we can see just in 2025 alone, from September to December 2025, Diablo's interest has pretty much dwindled. It only shot up a little bit, I guess, to fall again when the newest expansion got announced, but even that has its own problems too. During the latest expansion announcement called Lord of Hatred, Blizzard confirmed the Paladin class was coming back finally. You could actually play the Paladin right now, but like always with Blizzard, there was a catch. The Paladin is coming with the newest expansion in 2025 2026, but as seen here, you have to pre-order the expansion, which retails for $40 American or $50 Canadian, and then, and only then, do you gain access to the Paladin class. This is just another way that Blizzard has found a way to really monetize their game and force players into buying their content, because they are quite literally
Now, for a pessimistic look, again, please don't believe I'm saying like, oh man, look at this guy. So look at a load of this guy, right? I'm actually agreeing with him. Like everything he said in spirit, I'm saying like, yeah, like they're going to milk their player base to a point in which there's nothing left. You can't get blood from a stone, right? The thing I just looked it up. If you saw while I was looking away, right? I was trying to see if they had any revenue numbers from this year compared to last year for Blizzard. They're not apparently openly available from a cursory glance. But let's say, for instance, and I actually had this. I have real life experience with this, right? Place where I worked at, we had, let's say, we had 100 customers per day. Okay, then our price went up 40%. We only had 50 customers that time next year. So we lost 50 customers, but that 50 customers that we had were willing to pay 35% more for that product for the same year. They cut a couple employees because you know how that goes, right? And they ended up with more. But then, we got busier because we had the availability to provide services to people when other people couldn't because the price was so low at some places. A race to the bottom. They weren't catch as many fish. We ended up with still less customers than we had last year, but we had more revenue because the amount of people who were willing to spend more money with us went up. And I'd be interested to see if all these people who are willing to pay, think about back in the day, if you paid $50 for a game, you got all the content. Then a year later, you pay $30 for the expansion. Okay. But now you pay $50 for the game, you can buy more cosmetics every single day if you choose to. And then every year you have to pay an expansion that's $50 as well while paying for more content. Yeah, you're not going to attract as many people, but instead of them spending money once a year, if you can get half of those people to spend money 3 times a year, you'll probably end up with more revenue. Terrible for the player base, great for the company. And as we know, companies live to make money. Large companies, especially, which is why I said we support AA, and they outclass AAA, and those will all exist. There's the casual fan will always buy a AAA product, right? But you can enjoy a great AA product and leave them to their own devices.
dangling a class that people have wanted for years in front of them. They just gotta open their wallets like usual first. And none of it sits well with me. I hate the idea of essentially taking content that is clearly ready to go and feature complete, and then instead using it as like breadcrumbs to entice people to pre-order your latest content instead. It just feels scummy, and honestly pay to win even. But like I said, this is how AAA works these days. They don't care about value really. If you want the entire Diablo 4 experience, it's gonna cost you way more than $80 these days. But this is the difference between what AAA and AA indies are doing, because you could buy all of No Rest for the Wicked for the price of like a single skin and then some in Diablo 4. This latest Diablo expansion is as expensive as buying the entirety of Arc Raiders right now as we speak. And yet Arc Raiders, at least for now as far as I know, will never have any paid expansions added to the game experience. There won't be any,
Now let's hope that comment doesn't age poorly. He said, as far as I know, they won't have any extra stuff. Let's hope that remains true, right? If their player base can support, if how they monetize their product can support never having to add stuff, great. But imagine how the player base will feel if, even if they're saying like, hey, we cannot sustain this game unless we add something. Like, please donate or help us out. And the amount of people will be like, no, you've already paid. We paid for the product. That's all we're worried about, right? And if it closes down, they'll be like, oh, why didn't anybody support this great game? It's better than X, Y, and Z. That revenue stream could help them in some way. So I hope that they don't have to charge anything, but you have to understand if they do have to have some maintenance costs covered.
pay us the entire price of the game again for like some new gun or whatever in Arc Raiders. Yet AAA has normalized these things, and it's horrific to say the least because it's just predatory and they know this and they still continue to do it anyways. Mike Ybarra would clap back at Thomas Mahler over his comments that Mike and his team at Activision when he worked there did completely ruin Diablo 4 and turn a promising sequel into a literal cash casino. Here's what Mike would say to Thomas after Thomas said Mike ruined Diablo 4 as it reads: "You can critique other games all you want, but running around putting down Diablo and Path of Exile begging people to play your game is stupid, and that is my point. You know it's stupid as well. I get you're desperate at this point, but I'd focus on your game and not Diablo 4 and Path of Exile. Oh boy, so Mike is now claiming that Thomas is desperate with No Rest for the Wicked and believes that the game will not do well enough to keep Moon Studios going. But Thomas would then clap back at Mike for ruining AAA games and being embarrassed by smaller indie titles like Path of Exile, which has, let's be honest, Path of Exile has completely ate Diablo's lunch and then some with way less resources and a much smaller team too. But here's what Thomas would say. It's a lot, but it's important here, so let me read it for you guys. If Blizzard would have done their jobs right, it shouldn't have been possible for a tiny Australian studio to snatch the ARPG crown away from them, but they sure did. And why? Because Chris Wilson is a good dude, similar to David Brevik. He understood the mission and got the job done. Meanwhile, who are the current visionaries at Blizzard, and what do they have to show for themselves? And no, I don't know that a developer pointing out that squeezing gamers with nasty microtransaction tricks is stupid. How in the world are you justifying that there's a $65 horse skin in Diablo? You were in charge when Blizzard made Diablo Immortal and Diablo 4. You are responsible, and both have done irreparable damage to the Diablo franchise we used to know and love. I'm guessing that's why you got booted and are now the head of some gambling company, Mike, so please don't lecture me on games. I probably forgot more about game design than you will ever know. First off, Thomas is going a little nuclear here, but let's be real, guys. Did anything he say there, is any of that just not true? Like, let's be real. Mike Ybarra is now the head of a gambling company, go figure, but Mahler is right. Mike did get forced out of Activision Blizzard a few years ago because he did effectively ruin the overall reputation of Diablo and Blizzard even more than it already was, which is kind of impressive.
And that's actually the point, right? Like that's the crux of what I was saying earlier, right? Let them fall if the product isn't where it needs to be. If people keep buying Madden every year, they'll always buy Madden. There's only one football product. That's why EA did what they did to get 2K out of the door on that, to make it so that people didn't have choice, right? People have choice if you want to play Path of Exile or this new game that's coming, which is crazy that I've heard the name 45 times. Kind of bad, that I didn't remember it. But if they want to play that, great. And if Activision goes, wow, we're losing goodwill, or Blizzard, we're losing goodwill. Let's get rid of the guy who made all these changes, and they decide to institute new policies that go back to what they did. Great, but if they're still using those same tactics and still making good revenue, then you haven't hated it enough. Like you, not enough people want change to institute that change. Every customer, like think about it, like and I'll check this while I'm playing the video to see if the 40,000, like it said at its peak it was 55,000. Now there's 10,000. They've lost 6,000 this year. I'd be interested to see how many people play Path of Exile. If it's not comparable to the number that left, I mean, then I'm not sure how you want to look at that. I'd have to think a little bit more about that. But if those players feasibly should have all went over there, and they should be making the revenue that Blizzard used to make on this game, and you think Blizzard would want that back, right? And would implement changes that make it closer to Path of Exile.
Impressive, actually. Diablo 4's reputation right now, let's be honest, that's in the dirt. You can't beat that dead horse any more than it's already been beaten. You know what I mean? The game's like a casino still to this day. You have skins still costing you more than entire indie games and then some. But Thomas Mahler is right here. How could Blizzard, with their billions of dollars and hordes of developers, get outdone by a much smaller studio that's in New Zealand, not Australia, but close enough in the world, I guess? But still, that smaller team that made Path of Exile, and they did completely cook Diablo 4.
Small thing. Hey, big respect to Endymion right there, right? I absolutely hate it myself when people don't do enough research to, how patronizing is that of him to say, like, to get the place wrong? He's on his phone. He could have taken a second to look up where that studio was, right? Like, hey, shout out, shout out.
Way that they did. Like, that doesn't just happen. Not to mention that Path of Exile 2 and the first game are free to play. Like, you don't need to buy any of the bundles or the microtransactions to even play Path of Exile 2. I know that Path of Exile 2 probably sounds too good to be true. Like, how is a game that is bigger and like better than Diablo 4 somehow free to play? But it is. You can experience the entire story and endgame of Path of Exile 2 and pay literally nothing at all. Besides cosmetics, which are optional, obviously, the only, I guess, pay to win aspect of Path of Exile 2, from what I understand anyways, is that you will have to eventually buy stash tabs, which are like storage expansions to your character if you get serious about like trading and keeping all the loot that you have, all the loot drops. But stash tabs, from what I understand, as seen here, vary in prices, but you don't need these to actually play the game or finish the story or anything like that. These stash tabs are really only for players who pretty much want to turn Path of Exile 2 into like their main game, you know what I mean? Like that's their whole hobby now. So if you want to fully immerse yourself in it in like every way you possibly can and do like full player trading and all that stuff, then yes, you will need those tabs, I guess. But again, for the casual player, that's not needed, and that's the point. Any DLC added to Path of Exile is also completely free, including future expansions. These expansions in Path of Exile 2, they're called leagues. They're like the free content updates. And no, like I said, you don't have to buy them at all, okay? They are free as well, and always will be, as of now anyways, as this video being made, I guess. But in terms of price differences, you can't really compare Path of Exile 2 to Diablo 4. It's just not even remotely in the same ballpark. You can never beat free, and Diablo is essentially nickel and diming you constantly with new cosmetics, forcing you to pay if you
And again, hey, shout out Path of Exile, because I think that's what made Overwatch. This is actually funny because I've got a parallel for this, right? This is how Overwatch, which is another Blizzard game, that's kind of funny, right? But it lost all its goodwill. Back when you first started playing Overwatch, everything was cosmetic. You got all the map updates, characters, stuff like that were free. You funded that with skins. They didn't affect gameplay, except for I think there was one time where there was a skin that actually changed the hitbox. Hey, correct me if I'm wrong. Throw that in the comments if you think about it, right? But and I was glad to, like, obviously the loot box problem is its own problem. We can talk about that being predatory in its own respect, but the fact that in the loot boxes were only things to wear, um, two things can be true. Loot boxes, predatory. Only being cosmetic and not gameplay breaking, things you can pay for, that's fine, right? Um, and eventually, Blizzard at some point was like, man, this ain't enough money. We need to make a second game with less. Have somebody pay for it. And then when people were like, I'm not paying for this, what are you talking about? Then like I think even now, where I haven't played Overwatch in years because of these changes, and I think now they've even added back in the sixth slot that they took out because they said they were balancing gameplay or whatever, right? Path of Exile making it so that only the people who want to get sweaty need to contribute money, and that would be that'll be a good swath, right? There's a lot of people who pay for even if it's a couple bucks. I say it's like $3, so you get two more slots or two more chests to hide to put things in, and it's 30 more items. A hardcore person will think that 30 more items is necessary, right? And anybody who says like, "Well, that's a stupid purchase," well, you don't have to make that purchase. It doesn't affect your game at all. Like if you're doing these diamond level dungeons, then it may affect you, but that's not you. You don't get sweaty like that. I see no problem with that. And that's kind of how games should be, right? Like if you're going to add content that affects gameplay, has to be free. If you're going to add content that only like, it's why single player. I don't mind when people cheat in single player games, right? If you add codes or DLC that breaks the game, it's your experience. I don't know why you'd want a lesser experience unless you've already beaten the game. But it's your game. It's not affecting anybody else. Enjoy it how you want to, right? And this is actually one of those things.
want to play like a single class early like the Paladin, or even entire expansions that cost about the same as Arc Raiders, and don't even get me started on those crossover skins like with Berserk. Those were insanely expensive too in Diablo 4. So if you want to experience Diablo 4 in its entirety, yes, it will set you back, and every season you need to pay for the battle pass or get left behind, I guess.
Yeah,
And
that's
this is
crazy.
what Thomas Mahler is criticizing Mike Ybarra for pretty much, that Mike and his influence on Diablo was cataclysmic to the reception and longevity of one of Blizzard's oldest and most beloved franchises. Like Thomas said, Diablo Immortal, that's the free-to-play game, but was also insanely expensive. Like if you actually wanted to do anything good in that game, you had to pay up. That was something that Mike Ybarra and his team, when he worked there, they dreamed up in the first place. Mike's influence was nothing short of awful on everything that he touches. That really can't be denied based on what's being shown. Like the guy also was instrumental in ensuring that Call of Duty was as predatory as possible too. Mike is the exact type of executive the gaming industry industry honestly needs less of. Because in Mike's eyes, you're all just kind of pay pigs who simply exist to just make his wallet bigger and his investors. And he clearly, frankly, cares little to nothing at all about the user experience, since he did completely ruin Diablo and made that fan base normalize the concept of no longer accepting not only fully priced AAA games, but releasing them full of microtransactions day one and battle passes, horse armor DLC, like it's Oblivion all over again. And then stupid nonsense, like again, pay gating new classes, all of this and more, while the competition does what Diablo 4 does for either way cheaper or literally free. It's not really rocket science why so many like myself have walked away from Diablo 4 the way that we did. Mike Ybarra would respond to Thomas ringing him out, and he would say this: I'm definitely not a designer, you can critique me all you want, game directors should always make decisions on games, that's not my point. I'm not here to point fingers, cry, and whine, I don't have to work anymore, you do. Just like Xbox's experience in working with you on Ori, all your future partners read this and understand what they are getting involved with. Good luck. I do really wish you and the team the best. You need to chill and focus on your team and your game. I hope it's successful. Ah yes, Mike, the slight jab there that you don't need to.
Now, that's crazy that he would say that. Like, obviously, it's because he's not passionate about the thing, right? So, to give a little anecdote, I'm not gonna react to this whole thing, or I'm not gonna. I'm trying to over talk, right? But like, but to give a little anecdote, there was a restaurant in a small town near where I live, right? And it recently closed down, and everybody was like, "Oh, I can't believe it! I can't believe it!" And then I asked, I was like, "Man, every time, like, it was to one person specifically, I said, every time you mention this restaurant, you talk about how the quality has gone downhill. Like, it's like they don't care as much, the service has gotten worse, whatever." I said, like, he was like, "Yeah, when the grandparents owned it, it was great." And I was like, "Oh man, that's your answer right there." Like, like it was the passion project of the parents, right? Like they were the grandparents. They started it, their blood, sweat, and tears is in there, right? The kids were there to see the highs and lows of the company, the blood, sweat, and tear they put in, and the parents have a respect and a duty to that, right? They weren't the original passion, but they had a connection to the passion, right? The grandkids are so far removed from that, right? It may be an okay business now, right? Like it's stable, not a lot of highs, not a lot of lows. It's a chore now. It's a job, and the kids don't want a job, and if they do want a job, they want a job that they want. They want it the way they see it. So by the time it got to the third generation, the heart's not anymore. Like, there's not a kid doing homework in the corner, so the food's not going to hit like it's supposed to, right? And so the business closed down because those kids might have wanted to do other things, like, sold off all the assets, got what they could out of it, and they started their own lives. Mike Ybarra didn't start Blizzard. Like, he didn't start Diablo. He doesn't care about it further than it's his job. That's what Path of Exile and Tales of Kenzera, and I mean most Telltale games feel like that, right? They feel like people who want to make this thing. He is in charge of getting as much profit out of it. That's why he's the head of a gambling company now. And it's great that he's gone because maybe they'll get somebody who's actually passionate about it, and we can hope that they do.
To work anymore because you finessed and ruined entire gaming franchises by turning them into online casinos to just fill you and your investors' pockets because you couldn't care less about the user experience. This is not the win you think it is. Sure, you have money, I guess, but you have a terrible reputation when all things are said and done. You are quite literally running a casino website right now. That's the most my haters were right all along job pivot I've seen in a while. Like, this is the
For
guy who
sure.
wants you to be okay with paying more for less, but when he's hit with real logic and frustration, he factory resets to typical neutral executive talk instead. But Thomas Mahler would respond again to Mike, and he would say this: Mike, we're independent. We're not reliant on
Oh, a woman. You better not let Andy Pants Gaming see her. He's gonna say the only reason why it failed is because she was involved.
any publisher. I know that's hard to grasp for people who never worked at private companies and have only experienced the corporate world, but it's nice not having to say yes to stuff you should say no to. All our partners know me, Moon, and what we stand for. Not sure why you needed to tell me that you don't have to work anymore, but that I do. I work because I love my
Hmm.
job. Because we want to make amazing games for players, not because someone is forcing me to. And I don't know if pointing out that you got a golden handshake after getting fired for your tenure at Blizzard makes you look particularly particularly great either. Anyways, no hard feelings, yada yada yada. I mean, look, okay, he's right. Mike is your typical AAA executive, okay? He overpromises, he underdelivers, he heavily monetizes everything, causing it all to crash down, and then he will leave the company that you ruined at the expense of goodwill and other jobs, I guess. I mean, you as in Mike here, in futures, because Mike signed like a contract that will leave him with like a golden parachute no matter what happens anyways. This is literally why AAA games suck so bad these days, guys, because people are like this pretty much, okay? They're running these companies and genuinely don't care about the games that they are tasked with improving. Why do you think that Diablo 4 or Call of Duty have been so bad for so long? Because the user experience doesn't matter to these people. The only thing that does is the bottom line. The wallet's refilling. The money has to overflow. Ironically, what Mike doesn't seem to realize is that by giving players what they would have wanted and respecting them in the first place, Blizzard and Activision would actually have made more money that way too. Because obviously a healthy game means more revenue, whereas the way Mike Ybarra and people like him are used to doing things, it's instead, let's overhype something, get people to buy in early, overpromise on everything, completely underdeliver in every aspect, and then take that massive surge of like short-term monetary gain and then just do that again and again and again. But what I do want you to notice, however, is that nowhere in what Thomas Mahler said to Mike Ybarra did Mike ever really refute or provide any like evidence or opinion that could actually discredit what Thomas felt people like Mike were doing to AAA video games as a whole in the first place. Mike couldn't combat anything he said. He couldn't say, no, we do not make games better for players, because he knows that that's not what he does. Mike knows in his heart that what he's doing is disingenuous to the paying customers of these franchises that he didn't even help conceive of in the first place. He was only brought to Activision Blizzard for the few years that he worked there for a very simple reason: monetization. I mean, let's even go look at Mike's LinkedIn, because this proves exactly what I'm saying. His longest job in AAA gaming was being a partner studio manager to corporate vice president at Microsoft for almost 20 years. Mike worked to actualize publishing in Xbox games, and at one point is seen there when he was corporate vice president of program management. His job was to create products that would engage and continue to gain fans' trust. Not even my words. That's his own, in his own profile. He wrote that himself. He then worked as seen here at Blizzard from November 2019 to May 2024, where he was executive vice president and eventually president of Blizzard Entertainment. And all Mike did during that time was insanely over-monetize everything that he could get his hands on, fill these AAA games with predatory practices, and ruin everything pretty much. Like, let's be
one of the things I noticed is he said like Mike hasn't tried to refute anything that Thomas has said. He doesn't need to because it's not important to him, right? Like one of the things that we think about I assume Endymion seems like he thinks a lot like me, where like if somebody says like, why do you do this thing, right? Why is just as important as the thing that somebody does. So he thinks that it's a gotcha that Thomas is saying like, hey, look at all these things I'm saying about you, and Mike's just like, yeah, okay, I'm rich, like, right. But he's described in his LinkedIn that his existence is tied to, like, his passion is cashing out. Like his passion is maximizing, taking, and like redistributing wealth from other people to him and the people who pay him, right? So he did his job. He was like, I'm not worried about this game. The game is an instrument to extract resources, and I did that at a high level. They got rid of me, and I'm now at a new place to extract more resources. The field doesn't matter. My job is to get resources from A to B. You're passionate about it. I don't have to disprove you because you're not. It's like when somebody says like, "Oh, you're a poser. You weren't with us when we were poor back in the day." It's like I didn't have to be. I wasn't born yet. Like stuff like that. Like Ibarra's goal wasn't to make a good game. His goal was to get profit for the company. The game was the vehicle. You get what I'm saying?
He did that. He then says that he left, but he probably likely got forced out, as Thomas Mahler says, and Thomas might actually know things from the inside.
Thomas Mueller. I apologize. I said Mueller. It's Mueller. I just said I don't like when people don't acknowledge that they could have just looked something up. Mueller.
Which wouldn't really surprise me. I mean, Thomas literally said he got fired. He probably knows that. And now Mike, like I said, runs Prize Picks, a literal gambling company, like I said before now. This guy is frankly everything that was wrong with AAA gaming to a T, like actual supervillain portfolio on display. A user would respond to Thomas Mahler during all of this saying that it was better when developers were competitive instead of being fake nice all of the time, but Thomas would then reply, this toxic positivity stuff is for the birds. If you make a bad game, you should feel bad about it, and there shouldn't be a bunch of people people that
Hmm.
congratulate you for an awful job well done. You ask gamers to spend 60, $70 on a game, make sure they get something for it. Again, I mean, he's right. I mean, it's a big reason why it's hard to justify buying most Western games these days at the full price. But in the case of Activision Blizzard, nothing they've made in years, in my opinion, has been worth the money that you've spent on it. If they're not busy trying to push out a new Call of Duty every single year, they're just trying to monetize whatever fans they have left to make as much money as possible before more people leave. Again, they did try to release back-to-back sequels like Black Ops 6 and 7, and I don't need to tell you how poorly that went for them because you all know that already. But the frustrating part is that when Activision Blizzard has access to Diablo, World of Warcraft, StarCraft, the Call of Duty games, etc., these are all franchises that used to be amazing. They had real creative, and how would I put this? I guess real cachet, if that makes sense, right? Like when a new Blizzard game got announced back in the day, it was earth-shattering. Like, whoa, dude, they're making a new Diablo game. Now the once rock-solid, amazing, almost borderline mythic reputation that Blizzard had back in the day is now almost always met with trepidation, cynicism, and a general belief that sure, what they're showing may look good at first, but how will they screw me over this time like they always do in the past, right? It's why these days terms like value have felt more like a dirty word when describing your game than anything else. If a company feels the need to say that this feature or that provides value, it almost certainly does anything but that. It also leads to what I call a content drought. A game pushing live service elements always opts to rather give you said content in drip feeding ways instead of dropping it all on you at once like they used to. This has ruined games like Destiny or Diablo aplenty, yet AAA still believes this is better, but only because it keeps these games longer in the public conscience, so to speak. Give them just a bit of story, lead them on just a bit more with some daily quests, let them get hungry and keep them starved so that every little bit of a crumb you actually give them that they consume, they will want more and more.
Now you guys got the gist of the video. Like obviously, like so I'm gonna do a lot more reacts on. I mean, I know I say that, but I have a list. Like I have a list of all the things that I want to do, and I will eventually get to them. But you hold me to it, right? I don't say like don't hold it against me. You should hold it against me. I should be accountable when I say I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that, right? But you get what he's saying. Like he's saying like that spending $100, $200 on a game shouldn't be the way the industry's moving. But I would have to say, I would have to add on to it. Again, I'm not disagreeing with what he's saying. I'm absolutely in his camp on this one that games should be passions. They should be player adjacent, player facing, in the player's benefit. And then the developer of that should make money because that's their goal, right? They put up the money to make this project. They should make their money back and then some. That's the point of a company. But it's in our best interest for the company to see the player as a long-term investment. Like the game is the vehicle to secure their long-term investment, and goodwill is a big part of that, right? It's not just nickel and dime, and you get every penny you can out. That it's something that said, like if you do any sort of business, if you work in the business world and you're close to the people at the top of the business, a good businessman says I'm not going to lie. I worked in sales almost my whole life, right? One of the things I used to say, I'm not tooting my own horn, but I was pretty successful, selling things, right? I'm not the most successful, not the least successful, but I never lost my job, right? Never lost one, right? But one of the things that I always told people is like, I don't want to sell you something. Like they'd always say, like, oh, you're not trying to upsell me. I was like, I don't want to sell you anything. I want you to buy something from me, right? Because the industry that I worked in, if they returned the item 90 days later, I lost the money from that after the fact, right? So they gave me my money next month. But then a month from that, if like 10 of the people return those items, I lost those 10 that commission the next month. So I didn't want to, why would I do 10 things worth of work just to not get paid for it? So my goal is to give you the right item, right package, right solution so that you wouldn't so you felt good later. Like you felt like, hey, I got this. This guy helped me get a deal. And that's how I looked at a customer. I didn't look at them as like if I get. There were some people that I know they didn't last as long as I did because they're like I want to get every penny out of this person, and they would often have like customer issues. People coming back in like I'm never coming to you again. I'm never coming back here. I would have people come in every year, every 2 years to re up with me. And yeah, I didn't make the most money, but I made a good amount of money consistently. And that should be the goal of these businesses. So, hey, thanks for tapping in with me. Thanks for being here for the video. I'm going to link the video on the page. Go to Endymion's channel, support, like his stuff. For me, like, subscribe, comment, hit the bell notification. Uh, I hope that nobody goes to his page and finds a video where he's like saying, if I see another black person in a video game, I'm going to kill myself or whatever, so I don't have to eat my words on this. But hey, thanks for joining me on this video. One.